Good morning, everyone. It's time to get started with day 6 of the Writing Institute. Hello, welcome. If you're new to my channel, my name is Mariely Sanchez and I'm a 4th grade teacher in South Florida. I just arrived at the parking lot of where the Writing Institute is. I am kind of tired. I stayed up late last night finishing up the revisions for my writing piece that I'm submitting and also finishing up my lesson plan. I detailed it. I even created a model for it, and I'll share more about that lesson plan on Thursday, which is the day that we all share our lesson plans. But today we have some other amazing speakers to learn from. So I'm going to go ahead and go right in, get some breakfast hopefully, and get started with my day.
This was our flight plan for today, and on our desk we received these goodies, and we also received the book Patterns of Power, which was the main presentation for the day given by Whitney LaRocca, which is here. During lunch, we went to this little gift shop that they had, and they had a lot of shirts. I ended up buying 3 of them, but they also had different books that were on sale, as well as different trinkets and things that were available to us. Then in the afternoon, we got Patterns of Wonder as our gift, and we continued learning about this amazing strategy. We also got this water bottle, and Whitney received a gift at the end of her presentation.
All right, everyone, we have just wrapped up day 6, and I have a ton of information to share with you, so let's go ahead and get started. We started the morning with our usual morning rites. So to start the stimulus, our facilitator asked us to grab our adventure picture. Mine happened to be the one with my son and I standing on the stairs in the Disney Dream Cruise when I took him by surprise in 2015. And then after that, she had someone in our group read the poem Family Reunion. After reading the poem, we were instructed to open our writer's notebook and on the left-hand side, write a planner to share a little bit about that moment that is in the picture. So think about what that moment was, what was happening, who are in the photo, etc. So again, that's pre-planning. That was getting us ready for the writing. After we did that, we went ahead and took it to writing to tell a little bit more about that particular event. We were given a couple of minutes to write, and then we were asked to take our highlighter, which was our new gift for today. It's a little pen that has the opposite side as a highlighter. It was really nice. So we were asked to go ahead and highlight a sentence in our writing that either used a figurative language or had really good details. So we highlighted it and then we shared it. And then we went around and everybody shared that particular sentence that they highlighted. And it was great to hear everyone's responses. This is a great idea. Like if you want to do a back to school writing activity where you want the students to write about what they did for the summer, you can have them bring a picture of something that they did in the summer or something that represents an activity that they did in the summer, and they can bring it, go through the same process and write about it. They also mentioned the book, The Best Part of Me, which again has different students take photos of different parts of themselves that they love and then have that springboard some writing. So I'll link that book down in the description box below. After that, some of us didn't get to share our writing pieces that we were submitting for publishing yesterday. So we had an opportunity to go ahead and share that. So I got to share my Where I'm From poem that I'm very proud of, and I'm very happy that I wrote it. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did read it to my parents and they absolutely loved it. And it's about my memories as a child living in Puerto Rico, which is where I'm from, and all the wonderful family memories that are attached to that. They then went over the vivid verb vocabulary, which is a really great book. I've gotten it the last couple times that I come to the Institute. And in the first couple of pages, it kind of goes over how you can use it. It's a vivid verb every day. It has neat little illustrations that were hand-drawn by students. The facilitator told us that the way that she uses it is to supplement the Wonders vocabulary words, because with every Wonders unit that we have a total of 8 words. And to her, that's not enough for her 4th grader. So she uses some of the words in the vivid verb calendar to supplement some of that. She also does a little game with them and she puts them in teams. And if teams are able to use the word correctly in a sentence, they earn points. And she gives extra points if students use an "a-woo-bis" at the beginning or the end of the sentence. And I'm glad that she mentioned "a-woo-bis" because that ties into the presenter that we had for the entire day. Today we had one presenter and we had her in the morning and in the afternoon, and it was awesome because we got to learn so many great strategies from her, which I can't wait to share with you. And that is where I'm taking you right now. So our presenter was Whitney LaRocca, who is the co-author of Patterns of Power, which is a book by Jeff Anderson as well. If you're not familiar with Jeff Anderson, he has written the book Mechanically Inclined, Writing Every Day, and so forth. But he has combined all of those ideas into these Patterns of Power book. So Whitney was actually brought on to co-author with him because she's taking his secondary ideas of incorporating grammar and conventions in a way that it's more meaningful for students and results in transfer into their own writing, because she has experience with elementary, so they were able to adapt his ideas from secondary into elementary. So this one right here, the reddish orange one, the Patterns of Power, is from grades 1 through 5. But in the afternoon, we also got Patterns of Wonder, which is an adapted strategy similar to Patterns of Power, but for pre-K through first grade teachers and students. I also had Whitney autograph both books, and let me just tell you, her presentation, another amazing presentation. Again, if you're a teacher in South Florida, please look into the Glazer Lorton Writing Institute next year. The link is in the description box below. Bookmark it sometime in March, April, May. Look towards that site and see how you can apply to possibly be a participant in next year's conference. The main purpose of Patterns of Power is to allow students to focus on what is correct in writing instead of looking for ways to fix something. You give them a sentence that has errors and ask them to fix it. Whitney spent some time at the beginning of her presentation showing us why this may not be the best method to have students not only learn the conventions of English and grammar, but also be able to apply those into their own writing. She said that teachers are spending a lot of time correcting grammar, but not seeing it translated in students' writing, and that implementing Jeff's strategies helps students get excited for writing and the skills transfer to their writing. And she saw this in her own school where she was coaching and teaching. I learned something really cool about Patterns of Power. They actually have a podcast, or they actually call it a popcast, because POP stands for Patterns of Power. So if you're interested in listening more about Patterns of Power and how you can implement this, I recommend that you go to your podcast app or to Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts and check them out. She then went on to have us just have a conversation about books. And she proceeded to share her favorite book, a book she recently enjoyed, a book she's currently reading, and what's next up in her reading. And then she had us turn and talk to the person next to us so that we can share books that we like to read. She did this with the intention to remind us that reading should be celebrated, and we should always allow students to share what books they're currently reading or have read or are looking forward to reading. You as a teacher can do the same. I have seen teachers post like by their classroom door, let's say Miss Sanchez is currently reading this and she will read this next. Or teachers that take pictures of the covers of each book, print them out, and start a collection of all the books that that teacher has read by herself independently throughout the school year. It's just a great way to motivate students to read, because readers become writers, right? And like Jen Jones has said, reading is breathing in, writing is breathing out. They are both connected, which leads us to the main backbone behind Patterns of Power is using mentor text to help students learn the conventions of English and grammar skills. So instead of showing them sentences that are not correct, you show them sentences that are well-written sentences that come from mentor text, and have the students notice what's good in those sentences and then eventually apply it to their own writing. So she went ahead after we did this, she went over all the steps in Patterns of Power and how the daily routine takes place, which is something that takes no longer than 10 minutes a day.
And now I'm coming to you on a different day because I actually was trying to use a new mic and the microphone lost battery and it took all my audio with it. There is a total of 40 minutes of unedited me just sitting here in the car talking about all the wonderful things that Whitney LaRocca shared, and you can't hear anything that I am saying. So I'm coming to you on a different day, same place, and trying to go back and share everything else from day 6 of the Writing Institute. So let's get to it. I last mentioned that Whitney LaRocca shared how easy it is to do the Patterns of Power strategy. It takes literally 10 minutes a day. She said that if you are pressed for time, you can just take 5 minutes from your reading block and 5 minutes from your writing block so that you can make time for Patterns of Power and make it a daily practice in your classroom. So before I get to all those simple steps, I do want to share the next activity that Whitney did with us, which was she read the book Love by Matt de la Peña, and it was an amazing, beautiful story. Let's just say I'm buying it and reading it
with my students as a springboard to hopefully some writing. Because after she read the book with us, she had us turn to someone and share with them something, a part that stuck with us from the story. And then the students can then springboard to writing, talking about what love means to them, since that is what the book was about. Beautiful story. I highly recommend it. I'll link it down below. And again, piggybacking on the best part of me, which I mentioned earlier in this video, since the book Love talks about love, the best part of me also refers to a part of yourself that you love. So that is another activity that you can possibly think about doing as well. And Whitney used the book Love in order to springboard this next part of her presentation, because she said that just like love is abstract, writing is also abstract. And that's when she had us go to our notebooks and write what we believe writing is. I wrote what writing is to me, and I wrote it in my notebook, and then she had different people share what writing is to them. And it's interesting because one of the people in the room that turned into my friend, she shared something that was related to mine, and I'm like, hello, like, are we like on the same wavelength? Because we literally were thinking the same thing. I'm actually going to read to you what I wrote. Writing is a tool. Writing is a creative outlet. Writing is exhaling all my thoughts and frustrations on paper. Writing is a loom, allowing me to weave each letter, word, and sentences into blankets I can find comfort in. So, my friends, that was so beautiful. And I was like, yeah, writing is like a blanket, right? Like actually like a loom that helps me build a blanket of words and sentences that I can find comfort in. And that's what I see writing as. So it's interesting because the other person in the class, my friend, she talked about writing being a blanket. So it was so similar. It was amazing. So as people were sharing what writing was to them, Whitney was collecting all of those ideas, and this is what we were able to share together. Writing is a way to record and remember. It is therapy. It is a form of communication. It provides comfort. It shows gratitude. It's a way to connect with others. Writing is so powerful, and this is something that we need to remember and make sure that we are engaging our students with that every single day. We need to value and honor the voices our students have because their voice matters. So that's when she entered into going into what are grammar and conventions. So what are they? Basically, grammar and convention are structures that make meaning or have an effect. Another word we can use for structures is patterns. And again, that's why this book is titled Patterns of Power. In looking at grammar and conventions, we are asking, why do writers do what they do to make meaning? Whitney shared that grammar is reading and writing crashing together to make meaning. When we are looking at what writers do when they're writing, we are looking at it, we're reading it, we're analyzing so that we can then emulate or imitate it into our own writing. See how this is connected to the previous day on day 5 when Kelly Gallagher was sharing the same strategy? Read, analyze, emulate, or imitate. And this is when we started going over how Patterns of Power takes 10 minutes every day in your classroom. The book itself has a collection of various lessons that can take about 2 weeks to complete, going over a variety of different grammar and convention skills. The book is not meant for you to go in order because you will never finish it. And also, you're supposed to just go and see what are the areas that your students need to grow in as writers. You will learn this as the students produce writing throughout the school year, starting at the beginning. You can see which are the skills that you may want to go over. Also, if you are using the Reading Wonders series and you're looking at the specific grammar skill, you can look at that grammar skill in your pacing guide and look for a lesson within Patterns of Power that you can use to help students understand that grammar skill instead of using some of the activities for grammar that are in that series, as an example. The bottom line is students need to know that writers make choices to make meaning. They make the choices about how they should write sentences, what punctuation to use, what type of sentence they are using in order to create the meaning that they want the reader to walk out with, which goes into author's purpose, which is the why. You may show students a mentor sentence, and you may want students to look at why did they choose to use a period?
You can then flip it back to the student, because they're writers themselves, and ask them why they chose to omit a period or add a period or use that punctuation mark, so that they can see the meaning that they're creating with the choices that they're putting in their writing. It helps them reflect about what they're doing and really find the purpose in what they are creating. The other question we need to ask is on author's craft, which is the how is the author doing it? When you're teaching a particular grammar convention skills, you may ask the students, how will you choose to use commas in a series or questions, things like that in their writing. The bottom line is, writing is all about choices. She shared with us this little quote that a third grader shared, and it was really cute. It said, punctuation makes sentences comfortable. That is adorable. And I'm definitely going to keep in mind to share that with my students when the school year starts. Remember, writing is not a fill-in-the-blank exercise, and this is by author Appleby from the NCTE 2012. You cannot expect students to really learn grammar and conventions by doing fill-in-the-blank worksheets every day that in the end do not cause them to transfer that into their own writing. It needs to be more meaningful and purposeful, and that's why there is power in patterns of power, pun intended. Asking students what's wrong in a grammatically incorrect sentence will only leave them thinking that there's nothing wrong. They literally just see that writing is perfect as it is, even if it has errors. And this is when Whitney LaRocca showed us a picture of her little girl when she was little. And she said, is there anything wrong with this picture? And we were like, no, she's beautiful just the way she is. And that's when she was trying to tell us, this is what students look at when they're looking at writing. They think that is okay, just the way it is. They don't understand the intricate details that go into it. And then she told us this picture has actually been photoshopped, and there were different things embedded throughout the picture that you wouldn't know unless you knew about photoshopping skills, or if you actually knew her daughter. For example, her daughter's eyes in the picture were darker than they really are in real life because her eyes are actually deep blue. That was a great concrete example that she used to help us see and understand why students, if they're looking at sentences that are not written correctly, why that is not a way to help them learn, because they're not really going to understand what is really wrong with the sentence. So again, bottom line, don't use correct alls. Maybe look into patterns of power and see if this is something that would be very beneficial for you and your students. It's not about fixing mistakes. It's about clarifying writing for the reader. And this is where Whitney flipped it. And instead of showing us a picture of her daughter and asking the question, what is wrong with this picture? She showed us a different picture of her daughter and asked us a question, what do you notice? See the difference in that type of questioning? Because now there's no wrong answer. What do you notice? You're literally just looking at the photo and then sharing what you notice. She was wearing a baseball cap. She was wearing a pink shirt and things like that. And when people would share what they noticed, Whitney will follow up the question with, how do you know that? What in the picture makes you say that? And again, that allows for more clarification. And that is how patterns of power is done. You don't show students a sentence that's wrong. You show students a mentor sentence that's written well, and then you ask them, what do you notice about this sentence? And that starts a conversation for grammar and convention skills. And it also allows you as a teacher to notice what skills your students already know and what skills they may need a little bit more teaching in the future. That's why in patterns of power, it works with invitation. And the first invitation is invitation to notice, where you show the students a mentor sentence and you ask them, what do you notice? That's done on day one. That will take about 10 minutes because you're showing the sentence, you're having the students tell you what they notice, and you start writing it down on the board until somebody mentions something that is connected to the focus phrase. Here, Whitney took us to another book that she mentioned called Fireflies. And this is an amazing, beautiful book about a boy that finds fireflies, puts them in a jar, takes them home. But as he is in the house, he notices that the fireflies' light begins to dim. And that's when he realizes that he shouldn't keep the fireflies in the jar. So he releases them. So it does have a happy ending, but it does have an important lesson to be learned. Whitney told us our students are just like fireflies. When we trap them in a jar with this is right and this is wrong, it causes them to dim their light. And this causes them to write less and less in fear
of being wrong. Patterns of Power allows inquiry and play. The open-ended questions make students feel like they can't be wrong. She went ahead and showed us the book, Biggest, Strongest, Fastest by Stephen Jenkins, which she used as a mentor text. And she says when you're choosing a book from a mentor text to find a sentence in, you don't necessarily have to read the whole book. You can just read a page or two where the mentor sentence is in and focus on that particular sentence. She used this example. She said, oh, boys and girls, we have books by Stephen Jenkins in our classroom library. I wonder if we can learn from him about what we can do in our writing. So she'll pull that book out of her library. She reads that part that she wants to focus in, and she focused on these two sentences. Animals live all around us. They crawl, walk, run, hop, swim, and fly. So once she showed that sentence, she invited everyone with the question, what do you notice? This question allows inquiry. Students will discover the patterns as they look at that mentor text. Whitney recommended that students can do these invitations in a small part of their notebook where they just write the different things. In this case, maybe for day 1, they just write the different things they notice. On day 2, etc. So it shouldn't take a lot of space in the writing notebook, but you should have a little section for it. And she does not recommend you creating worksheets for them to do this because it should be just a process where they are just freely thinking as they are engaging in each invitation. So she had us notice the sentence and then turn and talk to the person next to us to share what it was that we noticed. As you keep doing this, later on you can add the question, why did the author choose to do that? So that the students go a little bit deeper into their inquiry. Then you bring the students back and have them all share what they noticed. And make sure, this is very important, that you honor everything that students share. And if they share something, for example, oh, I like the comma that they use, but they don't know that it's an apostrophe, you just have them come up and like, can you point to what you're referring so that you have a little bit of more clarification. And in that moment, you can have a teachable moment and just let them know, oh, that's actually called an apostrophe, but yeah, it does look like a little comma up there. So it's very important that whatever your students tell you, to honor what they are sharing. It's important to remember to honor, name, or reinforce the name of that skill or extend the skills as students share what they notice. One of the people shared, oh, I noticed there are verbs. And the teacher went ahead and asked, what are verbs? And the student made sure to name what the verbs were. And then the teacher had them act out in their seats what those verbs are. And that's when she introduced the focus phrase, which is, I use verbs to show action. Now, it's important to note that if the students mention the focus phrase at the beginning of the sharing, don't stop there. Have them continue to share what they notice, because that way you can see all the different skills that may be present in that particular mentor text. So for example, not only did we notice that the sentences use verbs, but we also noticed that there were pronouns, short sentence, and a long sentence, commas in a series, a connector word, which was and, conjunction, subject and verb. Every sentence had a verb. Combining sentences, there's a simple sentence with a compound predicate, and there was a logical progression of the verbs. This process allows you to spiral all the grammar and convention skills that you'll be teaching throughout the school year. And the more skills the students use, the more you'll see them notice it in future invitations to notice. All right, that was day 1. Then you come back on day 2, which is the invitation to compare and contrast. In this one, the teacher showed the original mentor sentences and then another sentence example that follows that same pattern. And then she invited us to compare. How are the sentences alike? How are they different? We turned and talked, we shared, and then we shared out. To start this invitation, the teacher first read the sentence. Then the teacher had the students and her read it together. We had the turn and talk conversation. We shared, and then we turned and talked about the effect between the sentences. And then we repeated the focus phrase, I use verbs to show action. As the conversation progresses, the rest of the 10 minutes, you're engaging in conversations about the grammar moves that the author decided to do in the sentence. You can also bring spelling into play, along with high frequency words, word spacing, homographs, etc. She shared this information from researcher John Hattie, which says, our brain has structures and we tap into comparative structures when we compare and contrast, which is the strategy that leads to deeper learning. It is so important to engage in compare and contrast because it helps our students reach deeper levels of learning. Then we move on to day 3, which is invitation to imitate. Day 3 can also be done on days 3 and 4. So invitation to imitate can actually take 1 to 2 days depending on your class. You can choose to imitate together, where the students and you come up with a sentence that imitates the pattern that we're focusing on in that week, using the mentor sentence as our inspiration. You literally go into the process that it takes writers to compose writing. And there are different ways that you can imitate. You can imitate with shared writing, interactive writing, or paired writing, which you use towards the end of the school year. Basically, you have to use the best one of these that will work better for your particular group of students. Regardless of which way you're choosing to imitate the mentor sentence, make sure students are writing their sentence imitation inside of their writing notebook. You can also invite the writer to come up with their own sentence. And with this particular sentence, they could choose to write about another animal, but they don't have to. And that's when she had us kind of brainstorm what other things or topics can we write about that is connected to this particular pattern that we're exploring with the mentor sentence. And again, as you can see, this is the first step in the writing process here. You can have students turn and talk and think of the different topics and then have them share out to write a collection on the board. These are the different topics that we came up with together. We could write this particular mentor sentence about tourists, bakers, teachers, babies, children, mosquitoes, laughter, travel, love, music, and so forth. As the teacher is collecting all this, she has an idea in mind of the type of sentence to write together as a class. Then the teacher guides the class in the construction of that sentence. She gives ideas on how to start the sentence, and then students turn and talk to find ways that they can start the sentence. The teacher gathers those ideas and then writes this on the board. Tourists visit Miami. They ... And that's when she had us turn and talk to each other on what kind of verbs that can go with tourists. And she also had us think about, should we choose 3, 4, 5? And she had us vote with our hands. So we ended up choosing 5 verbs that will help describe tourists. So once we turned and talked, we then shared out the different kind of verbs that we thought. So she wrote them on the board, and this is what we decided. Plan, explore, dance, shop, make memories. But then she had us think about, is there a way that we can rearrange these? So then she showed how we can rearrange again. This is like the revision process right there and then. Plan, explore, shop, dance, and make memories was what we decided. Then the teacher constructs the sentence. Again, notice how this process goes through planning, writing, and revising. And these are the sentences that we came up with. Tourists visit Miami. They explore, shop, dance, make memories, and plan to return. Notice the effect that that sentence creates, because we also rearranged some of the verbs in the last revision. This was a shared writing experience, so the teacher had us rewrite the sentence in our notebook, and after we rewrote the sentence in our notebook, she had us reread the sentence but tap every word as we reread it. This helps students to make sure they didn't skip a word as they were rewriting the sentence, which usually tends to happen. Then you have students reflect on what they did during that invitation to imitate and see how they can use that process in their own writing. So you can see how this can take 2 days. The first day, you're doing a shared writing activity where you're writing a sentence with the class. Maybe on the second day, an invitation to imitate, the students are writing their own sentence on their own, following the same pattern. After students finish imitating the sentence, it's time to celebrate. So the next time the students come in, it's invitation to celebrate. Because after they imitate that sentence, it's time to celebrate their writing. And it is so important that you do not skip this part, because we need to make sure that students associate writing with positive experiences. So how we celebrated with Whitney LaRocca? She gave everyone a sentence strip, and on that sentence strip, she asked us to write the sentence that we imitated on our own. Instead of a sentence strip, you can choose to use a sticky note or an index card, but find a way where students can rewrite the sentence that they imitated on the days when they were invited to do so. Invitation to celebrate happens on day 5, which is usually typically the last day of that first week in Patterns of Power. So the teacher starts by sharing the focus phrase again. In this case, it's I use verbs to show action. Students share their sentences in pairs. And for this particular way of sharing, she wanted us to act out the verbs, since we are using verbs to show action. So as we're sharing our sentence, we act out the verbs that we included in our imitation sentence. So in my sentence strip, I actually wrote my sentence based on Minecraft. And let me show you how I wrote that in my notebook. By the way, talking about my notebook, I haven't shared with you all the doodles that I finished doing on my notebook. So here is the front of my notebook. Has a little like world with a whole bunch of different things, which is my world, things that I love. And here's my little cat peeking through the corner. But also on the back, I created more doodles of different things that I love to draw. And in the back, I actually sectioned it off into different parts. And I really, really love how my writer's notebook came out. So here is that, because I realized that I haven't shown you how it looks. So here is what I added in my notebook for Invitation to Imitate. So here's the mentor sentence. This was the comparing sentence. Puppies live all around us. They bark, jump, and lick. Here is a sentence we created or imitated as a class. Tourists visit Miami. They explore, shop, dance, make memories, and plan to return. And here is my sentence using Minecraft. Creepers terrify all Minecrafters. They sneak, hiss, explode, and obliterate everything around them. So after I share that sentence with a person next to me, I rewrote it on that sentence strip. And then we had to go stand up, go across the room to someone that we haven't talked to, and do two things. One, read the sentence as usual, but the second time we read the sentence, we had to act out the verbs, and that was a lot of fun. I got to do it with Whitney, and then Whitney chose me to share it with the entire class, and one of our facilitators actually filmed that interaction, so here's the clip of that. Creepers terrify all Minecrafters. They sneak, hiss, explode, and obliterate everything. That was a lot of fun, but my sharing didn't stop there, because after I shared, Whitney went on and talked about my sentence and what she liked about what I had done. So here's the little clip to show that.
I'm going to give you some feedback now. Something that I noticed you did was the verbs that you chose to use action to show action definitely matched your subject. This is what creepers do, and it's specific to what they do in Minecraft. So you definitely made all of those connections. Another thing that you did was that you chose to use single verbs here and then use a phrase here, because obliterate you felt wasn't enough for your reader. You needed to add that extra information. And so what you did was, I think you really thought through your order here to make it flow for your reader.
Right. I wanted to show actually the sequence in which they do that.
There you go. Just like Steve did with his.
And then you cry when you lose all your items.
Thank you, Marielle. Let's give her a hand.
Notice the celebration continues. So it's not just about having the students celebrate their writing by sharing it with another person, but also celebrate their writing by what? Talking about the things that they did great in their writing, which brings us back to what we learned last week with Jennifer Jacobson, right? Positive reinforcement in the students' writing, and that will motivate them to continue. And then as a teacher sharing that, other students can also notice what they did in their sentence that they can then keep in mind, so they can probably use it and apply it in their writing. So I love how Whitney describes it when you have the students share it twice. The first time to hear it, the second time to love it. And that is beautiful. And she encouraged us to celebrate often. And I should mention that as Whitney was sharing the feedback on my sentence, it was related to the focus phrase of I use verbs to show action. All right, so now that we have done invitation to celebrate, we move on to day 6, which in this case, it's invitation to apply. Invitation to apply can be done on day 6, 7, 8, or even 9. So the rest of the week, you are just going to have students apply that skill into writing. This is how we are now transferring that skill, so that students are not just learning the grammar concept, but now having an opportunity to transfer it into actual writing. This is the time again for application and further exploration. So this is how she did it with us. She brought in the focus phrase again. I use verbs to show action. And she also showed how this can be used across subject areas, not just in writing, but in all the subjects. You may choose to create an anchor chart that the students refer to. It could be somewhere visual in your classroom, but it could also be one that your students keep in their notebooks. And in chapter 3 of Patterns of Power, they show you different ideas on how you can have students apply that concept into their writing. So with us, what Whitney did was she showed us a picture. This picture happened to be a picture of different children playing in a playground. And the picture, of course, is a picture that shows action. So she had us turn and talk to our neighbors, and we talked about the verbs that describe the action that is happening in that particular picture. Then she had us share out all the verbs, and she would write those verbs on the board. So with the verbs that were shared, she chose one word, which was flipping. She wrote it on the board, and then she asked us who is doing the flipping. So we said the children. So then she wrote on the board, the children are flipping. And then she said, you know, as writers, we can add more information to this sentence. What else can we add? So then we added where the children were, or where the children were doing the flipping. So then she added, the children are flipping too close to the ground. So then she's like, okay, so now let's make it about this particular child in the picture. So instead of saying the children, now we're going to give her a name. So we chose Jessica. Jessica is flipping. Or we can actually take out the ing, right? And say Jessica flips. That is still a full sentence so that students can see subject and predicate. You can even add something more, and you can say yesterday, comma, Jessica flipped. And then we can add and say tomorrow, Jessica will flip. So again, you're showing the students the verb tenses. And then students are invited to write a few sentences about that particular picture. So that was on day 6. And after we write our sentence about the picture, the sentences about the picture, we then turn and talk and share it with the person next to us. Again, this process takes no more than 10 minutes. Then on day 7, 8, whatever, you can show another picture and repeat the process, or have the students do it on their own, where they are writing a few sentences about that picture. This is where Whitney shared with us one way that she can collect a grade from this activity. Let's say on day 7, you show that different picture. You want to invite the students to write 5 sentences about the picture that uses verbs to go along with a focus phrase. I use verbs to show action. And what she does is she then awards 4 points per sentence. And the 4 points comes from using a capital letter at the beginning of the sentence, using correct and punctuation, using the focus phrase, and make sure it's a complete sentence. So that's where the 4 points come from, and she collects that grade and she can put it in her grade book. The last step is invitation to edit. And in this particular activity, we go back to the mentor sentence, but now the students are going to see it in 3 different ways where something was changed within the sentence. And this is how that process goes. It is not focused on what is wrong with the sentence, so I want to make sure I emphasize that. It is focused on the meaning and effect that the author creates when that change is made. So you need to make sure you review what was discussed in invitation to notice. So if you created an anchor chart for that, it's a good idea to bring it back so that they can see what they did notice in the original sentence. And then as they're looking at the different ways that the sentence changes, they can then see what is the meaning of this, what effect does it make, what happens when the sentence is changed. And that will encourage students to have conversations about that type of writing and its effect. You can pick the changes in the way that the sentence is edited in those 3 examples, depending on what you notice your students making. Maybe you want to emphasize different skills, so you want to make sure that you use that, or you can use the lesson as it is found in the book itself, because this particular lesson that she did with us is on page 125 at Patterns of Power for grades 1 through 5. She also gave an idea for us to leave a few pages somewhere in their writer's notebook where students can collect all the focus phrases as they continue throughout the school year, so that they can see all the different skills that they have learned as the year progresses. So that was a really great tip as well. So here is that particular lesson in Patterns of Power. So you can see how it's laid out for teachers, so that they know what to do as they're teaching this lesson. It also includes this information here, as well as these pages that you can then project under your document camera as you are conducting each invitation during that 2-week period. And here is the invitation to imitate and the invitation to edit. So that was the whole morning and part of the afternoon for Patterns of Power. And then the last hour of her presentation in the afternoon, she went over Patterns of Wonder. On page 66 of Patterns of Wonder, here is where the invitation process is outlined. So now that you know how the invitation process works with Patterns of Power, here you see some similarities with Patterns of Wonder, but it changes in order to apply to emergent writers. So we have invitation to notice and wonder, invitation to compare and contrast, invitation to imitate together, invitation to play, and invitation to celebrate. It does also take 2 weeks to implement as well, and the book also incorporates the various phases of emergent writers, which are scribble writing, which is oral language, symbol and letter writing, which is learning letters, transitional writing, which is matching letters to sounds, and conventional writing, which is sentences. Also, the book uses color in order to divide the different sections of emergent writing. This process for Patterns of Wonder, again, is for students in pre-K through first grade. And there is one particular part of the process that has the students color, draw and use color to color what they are going to write about. And color is important because emergent writers need color, especially scribblers. Color is connected to meaning. And you should allow emergent writers to use colors right from the beginning. Don't wait until the end of the activity for them to actually color. If color is missing, it impedes their learning and making meaning process. Color is also used in the organization of the book of Patterns of Wonder. They're intentional and they built upon complexity. There's even complexity within each chapter, so you can again pick the skills needed as it pertains to your particular group of students. The colors in Patterns of Wonder are also organized by the different phases of writing. And on page 84 and 85, you can actually find the correlations for each lesson in Patterns of Wonder. And here's the visual so you can see exactly what I mean by that. And you can see violet colors for scribble writing, the purple is for symbol and letter, green is for transitional, and the peach is for conventional writing. And you can see how the skills are correlated based on each. Again, if you'd like to learn more, I highly encourage you to get the book Patterns of Wonder. And also, if you're a teacher in grades 1 through 5, you can get a copy of Patterns of Power. Or you can even check out their podcast to learn more and see ways that you can implement this strategy. I can't wait to use it in my classroom this year. I am going to use it on a daily basis, and I can't wait to share that with you once the school year starts and my weekly classroom vlogs begin, so I can kind of walk you through the process of me doing it with my 2 groups, since I will be teaching ELA next year to 2 groups of 4th graders. So that, my friends, is everything that I wanted to share with you as it pertains to day 6 of the Writing Institute. Amazing experience learning from Whitney LaRocca. I even told her I'm going to be emailing her and asking her questions, and she was very open to that. So I can't wait to do that and use all of these ideas with my students, as well as share it with teachers in my school as well. And I hope that you're finding value with these videos that I'm bringing to you here on YouTube about my experience with the Writing Institute. Stay tuned for day 7 and day 8, which will be combined with day 9, which is the celebration for the end of the Writing Institute, which hopefully will be coming out later this week or within the next week. If you made it this far into the video, add a sun emoji to represent all the bright ideas that are incorporated in Patterns of Power. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment down below, let me know what you thought or any questions you may have, and leave your emoji. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I hope you have a beautiful, magical day, and don't forget to smile. Hello, dreamers, wishers, and magical thinkers. Thank you so much for making it to the very end of this video and for showing your support. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do so by clicking on my picture down here. You can also check out my latest videos here and here. Don't forget to believe in the magic that's inside you, because you are capable of great things. See you next time.